I never believed in moments that could change your life in an instant, not until that day on the bus. It started like any ordinary Tuesday, gray sky, the usual hum of tires against the asphalt, people shuffling with their headphones and their coffee cups, eyes glued to their phones. I was just another face in the crowd, sitting near the back, lost in my own thoughts, scrolling absent-mindedly through messages I didn't really care about. But then, he sat down across from me. There was nothing remarkable about him at first, just an older man with tired eyes and a coat that had seen better days. But the way he looked at me, it felt different, like he could see past the surface, straight into something I didn't even fully understand about myself. I tried to ignore it. I always do. People watch, people talk, people pass by. You learn to look away, to focus on your own world. But something about him made it impossible to just scroll on. He cleared his throat softly, and before I could brace myself for a casual comment, he said my name. I froze. My pulse kicked up like I'd been caught doing something I shouldn't have, except I didn't even know him. I blinked, certain I must have misheard, but he repeated it, slower this time, almost deliberate, and then added words I'll never forget. I've been waiting to tell you this before it's too late. For a second, I laughed nervously. It had to be some kind of joke, right? But the look in his eyes said otherwise. There was urgency there, a raw, almost desperate kind of urgency that made the bus feel smaller, like the air itself was thickening around us. My curiosity fought with the instinct to get up and move, to leave before things went any further. But I couldn't. Something about him rooted me in place, and even now, thinking back, I don't know why. As he leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper, I realized the bus had emptied almost completely. Everyone else seemed distant, like shadows. And then he said it, a sentence so strange, so specific to my life, that my stomach dropped. You don't know it yet, but someone is watching, and they've been closer than you think. I wanted to laugh it off, tell myself it was just some random stranger playing a prank. But deep down, something cold and insistent crawled up my spine. My hands started shaking without me realizing it, and I could feel the words settling like stones in my chest. He didn't say another word. Instead, he pulled a small, folded piece of paper from his coat pocket and slid it across the seat toward me. I stared at it. My name, my address, and a date scribbled in shaky handwriting. I didn't even recognize the handwriting, and yet, it made my heart pound in a way I couldn't ignore. And just as the bus screeched to a stop, he stood up, muttered, "Be ready," and walked away, disappearing into the crowd outside like he had never existed. I picked up the paper with trembling hands, staring at it, my mind racing faster than I could keep up. Who was he? What did he mean by be ready? And most importantly, why me? And that's when I realized whatever this was, it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I couldn't stop thinking about that bus ride. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him sitting there, leaning in, sliding that folded piece of paper across the seat. And every time, a shiver ran down my spine, because it wasn't just the words on the paper, it was the feeling behind them. Like someone had been quietly threading their way into my life, watching, waiting for the right moment to make themselves known. I'm not usually an anxious person. I lead a simple life. I work at a small publishing company downtown, mostly alone in my office surrounded by stacks of manuscripts, editing other people's stories while mine somehow never seem worth telling. My apartment is modest, cluttered with books and coffee mugs, and I spend evenings on the balcony, looking at the city lights, thinking about how ordinary everything is. I don't have many close friends. My family lives out of state, and my relationships tend to fizzle before they even begin. Life is quiet, predictable, and maybe that's why his words hit so hard. A few days before the bus ride, I'd been thinking about taking a short trip just to break the monotony. Nothing too ambitious, just a weekend somewhere different. But there was always something holding me back. Work deadlines, errands, excuses. And now, after the encounter, that little plan felt ridiculous. It felt like the universe, or maybe someone else entirely, was trying to force me out of my comfort zone. I tried to tell myself it was just a weird coincidence. Maybe he'd mistaken me for someone else. Maybe he was mentally unwell. Rational thoughts, but they barely scratched the surface of the fear creeping up my spine. My nights became restless. Every sound outside my window made me jump. And the paper, I kept it folded neatly on my desk, unwilling to open it during the day, but unable to resist at night. Something about that date written on it gnawed at me. I couldn't make sense of it. It wasn't a birthday, anniversary, or anything I recognized. Work offered little distraction. My colleagues noticed I'd become quieter, distracted. I nodded at their questions but barely heard them, lost in a spiral of what-ifs. And yet, I couldn't tell anyone about it. Who would believe me? A stranger on the bus, a cryptic warning, a mysterious note? It sounded insane. So I kept my mouth shut, bottled it up, pretending everything was normal while every instinct screamed that it wasn't. The weirdest part was remembering the way he looked at me. Not like he was angry or threatening, but like he knew something I didn't. Something I was supposed to know but had somehow forgotten. It wasn't fear I felt exactly. It was anticipation and dread. I tried to push it aside, tried to return to normal life. But the thought of that paper and the unknown meaning behind it wouldn't leave me alone. Who was he? Why had he singled me out? And what exactly was I supposed to be ready for? And then, that night, when the city was quiet and the hum of traffic softened to a dull roar, my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number. My heart sank as I saw a message appear, simple, chilling, and unmistakable. Tomorrow, you'll understand. I froze. My mind raced. The first clue had already been given. But now it was moving faster than I could process. And I had no idea if I was ready for what was coming. The next morning, I couldn't bring myself to move. My alarm went off, but I just stared at the ceiling, thinking about the message, the note, the stranger on the bus. Each second felt heavier than the last, like the air itself had thickened around me. Finally, I forced myself out of bed, my hands shaking as I checked the small piece of paper again. The date. It was today. I tried to convince myself it was coincidence. Maybe it was a reminder for something mundane. A bill, an appointment I'd forgotten, but my gut refused to accept that. There was a precision to it, an intention. And the stranger's eyes, the way he said, "Be ready." I could feel them, still, etched into my memory. By mid-morning, I found myself walking the streets aimlessly, as if being somewhere unfamiliar might give me answers. But the city felt different, like it had shifted overnight. Every passerby seemed a little too alert, a little too familiar. I couldn't shake the sensation that someone was following me, though every glance behind revealed nothing. My imagination was running wild. Or was it? At work, everything blurred. My co-workers' voices sounded distant, like echoes from another world. I kept imagining that bus again, the paper sliding across the seat, his whisper in my ear. I tried to focus on editing manuscripts, but my hands typed mechanically, my mind elsewhere. And then, a thought hit me. I wasn't safe. Not in my apartment, not on the streets, maybe not even here. The ordinary life I'd relied on for comfort suddenly felt fragile, like it could shatter at any moment. By late afternoon, I found myself at the coffee shop near my office, trying to calm down. That's when I noticed a man sitting at the far corner, glancing at me just slightly too often. His face was unfamiliar, but the way he looked, it stirred the same cold dread that had haunted me since the bus. My pulse raced, my throat tightened. Was it him? Or someone else entirely? I didn't know what to do. I felt trapped in a story that wasn't mine, but one I was being forced to live. And the note, the message, the date, everything pointed to something bigger than I could understand. I had no idea what was coming, or if I could even prepare. And then, my phone buzzed again. A picture appeared this time. My apartment. Taken from outside. I froze as I stared at the photo. My apartment. My living room exactly as it was. Messy books on the floor, the coffee mug I'd left half empty on the table, the faint glow of the desk lamp. And then, in the corner, a shadow. A dark, blurred figure just outside the sliding glass door. My hands went cold, my breath shallow. I wanted to scream, but no sound came. I didn't know who had sent it, but I didn't need to. The stranger on the bus, the cryptic note, the messages, it all clicked together in my mind like a nightmare puzzle coming to life. Someone was watching me. Someone had been tracking my every move. And I had no idea why. I left the coffee shop without finishing my drink, my steps frantic as I weaved through the streets. Every sound made me jump, the distant siren, the creak of a door, footsteps behind me. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see the stranger from the bus, or this new shadowy figure, following me like a predator in the night. My mind raced through every possibility. Was it revenge? A prank gone too far? Or something darker? By the time I reached my apartment building, dusk had settled over the city. The streets were quieter now, but it didn't make me feel safe. It made me feel exposed. I fumbled with my keys, trembling, every instinct screaming at me to turn around and run, but I couldn't. My apartment was my last safe place. Or so I thought. Inside, I checked the doors and windows, locking and double-checking each one. My heart pounded so loud I was sure the walls could hear it. But as I reached for the note again, to study it like a talisman, I noticed something new. Another slip of paper tucked under the lampshade. My name, written in the same shaky handwriting, with a single sentence that made my stomach drop. Tonight, you'll understand everything. I sank into the chair, my mind spinning. I had no idea what everything meant. Was it a warning? A threat? Or something even stranger? And why me? Why had this stranger chosen to drag me into this puzzle? I felt like a puppet in someone else's story, helpless, pulled towards something I couldn't yet see. And then came the sound. A soft, deliberate tapping at my window. My pulse spiked. I froze, barely daring to breathe. It was slow, rhythmic, almost like someone was waiting. I didn't know whether to call for help, run, or confront it. Every second stretched into eternity, my body locked in fear and anticipation. And then, I heard it. A whisper, faint but unmistakable, coming from just outside my apartment, echoing the words the stranger had said on the bus. Be ready. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't ready. Not even close. I barely had time to process the whisper when my phone buzzed again. Another message, but this one wasn't from a number I recognized. It was from someone I knew. My closest friend. Get out of your apartment. Now. They're inside. My hands froze around the phone. My mind spun in disbelief. How could it be possible? My friend had no reason to send me something like this unless it was real. The shadow at the window, the mysterious stranger, the note, the messages, it wasn't a prank. It was happening, and it was closer than I ever imagined. I backed away from the window, my eyes scanning the apartment. Every corner, every doorway seemed alive with unseen movement. The adrenaline made my thoughts scatter, but one terrifying idea wouldn't leave me. The person watching me wasn't just outside. They might already be inside. And that's when I noticed it, the front door, slightly ajar. I hadn't left it unlocked. I knew I hadn't. Somebody had been inside my apartment while I was at work. And now, they were still here. I froze in the doorway, staring at the slightly open front door. My pulse thundered in my ears as every instinct screamed at me to run. But my legs felt like lead, and my mind kept circling back to one impossible question. Who? Who was in my apartment and why? Slowly, I stepped forward, gripping the lamp like a weapon. The apartment was eerily quiet, but the sense of presence was suffocating. Then I saw it, footprints in the dust near the kitchen. Not subtle prints, but deliberate, slow, purposeful. Someone had been here, moving carefully, waiting. I followed them, breath shallow, every nerve screaming. And then I saw him, the stranger from the bus, standing in the corner, calm, almost casual, as if he owned the place. My hands shook as I pointed the lamp at him. Who are you? What do you want? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked slowly toward me, a sad smile on his face. I've been trying to protect you, he said. That's why I sent the notes, the messages. You were in danger, but you never noticed. And tonight, you finally see why. Before I could respond, the lights flickered, and suddenly, another figure appeared behind him, my friend. My heart dropped. You? I whispered. I had no choice, my friend said, voice trembling. They forced me. I didn't want to, but the stranger stepped forward again. Time is running out. You need to trust me if you want to survive. And then the final twist hit me like a punch. The danger wasn't outside. It wasn't a random stalker. It was someone I had already trusted, someone who had been orchestrating everything from the shadows. I realized, in that moment, that nothing in my life would ever feel safe the same way again. And that even now, I might already be too late. The room was tense, every heartbeat echoing louder than the last. The stranger from the bus and my friend stood across from me, their faces reflecting a mixture of fear and urgency. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to run, but something in me finally forced stillness. I had to know the truth. The stranger stepped closer, his eyes calm now, almost fatherly. You've been living blind to what's around you, he said quietly. People we trust can sometimes become the very danger we try to escape. That's why I warned you. That's why I followed you. I swallowed hard. My friend's face twisted with guilt. I never meant for this to happen, they said. They coerced me. I thought I could handle it, but I was wrong. And just like that, the tension broke, not in a scream or a fight, but in understanding. The danger wasn't random. It wasn't some faceless predator. It was human, real, and terrifying because it came from someone close. The stranger's warnings, the notes, the messages, they had been my lifeline, a chance to survive a situation I would never have seen coming. We worked together, following his instructions, carefully alert to every sound. Hours felt like minutes. Every shadow, every creak became a potential threat. And then, just as dawn broke over the city, the intruder, my friend's coerced accomplice, finally fled, realizing the game was lost. I slumped into my chair, exhausted, trembling, but alive. My apartment, my life, felt different now. Smaller, yes, but sharper, clearer. I'd learned a hard truth. Trust is precious, vigilance is vital, and sometimes the people who seem ordinary may hide extraordinary secrets. My friend sat beside me, and for the first time in hours, we talked honestly about fear, guilt, and mistakes. Tears came, but so did relief. We were still human, still capable of connection, even after betrayal. The stranger from the bus lingered at the doorway, a quiet protector fading back into anonymity. He didn't wait for thanks. He just disappeared, leaving a lingering sense of gratitude and caution. Weeks later, life returned to a fragile normal. I still take the bus, still walk the streets, but nothing is as naive as it once was. Every stranger, every face, holds the potential for a story untold. And I carry that lesson with me, not just as fear, but as awareness, as strength. And sometimes, late at night, when the city is quiet and the hum of life softens, I think about that day, the whisper, the note, the shadow. And I remember the stranger's words, "Be ready." I am ready now. But part of me wonders, was it ever really over? Or is this just the beginning of a story I'll never fully understand?